Welcome everybody to Icons Lean Coffee with Safe Fellow Kathy Marshak and SPCT Matt Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's session is about how to get started with SAFE, and I'm going to turn it over straight away to Matt and Kathy to begin.
Hi, thanks Alyssa. Welcome everybody. I'm Kathy Marshak. I'm a SPCT and a SAFE Fellow. I'm super excited to be with you guys here today. Matt, you want to say hey?
Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. Matt Aaron, SPCT.
Great. So let's quickly review our game plan for this hour. You should have a link in the chat within this webinar, as well as in your reminder email that you got yesterday, and it will give you a link to a Lean Coffee board. Please, as we're getting started here, review the topics that are already posted on the Lean Coffee board. If you would like to add another topic, you can easily do that. You'll see a little place where you can add a topic right at the very top. We'll give everybody another minute or two to post their questions or their topics for today's conversation. We will then give everybody a chance to vote on their most important topics. You'll have 3 votes to spend. You can spend your votes however you want. You can put them all on one topic, or you can distribute them as you see fit. Once we have finished with the voting process, we will start kind of a modified form of a lean coffee. We will set a timer for 5 minutes. We'll start the most popular topic first. Matt and I will go through, we'll have a conversation. As we hit the time box of 5 minutes, you will all then be given an opportunity to vote to decide if we continue discussing the topic, if we're finished with the topic, thumbs down, or if you are neutral, kind of a sideways thumb, and you'll let other people decide. You'll see how that works in action in just a minute. That's kind of our modified lean coffee approach for today. As Alyssa said, if you have other topics or questions, or if you need some help, you can always use chat as well. If you are seeing my screen here in Zoom, you can see the topics that already exist.
Also, our chat was momentarily disabled. It is now re-enabled, so you can type in the chat or in the Q&A.
Great, thank you. And if anybody is having a problem for some reason accessing this Lean Coffee board, you can put your topic into chat and Alyssa can just add the topic. All right, why don't we give folks another 1 minute to add in their topic. And Alyssa, for the people that have just joined, you want to repost the link in chat?
Absolutely, yep.
Thanks. And so if you want to vote on the topic, you will need to join the Lean Coffee board. Great, all right, we see a couple more people adding some topics here. Some of these cards have long questions, and so you can see, looking at my screen, you may need to scroll in the card itself. Okay, I see a number of you have started to vote. So let me ask you to do that as well. If you have not already done so, please spend your 3 votes. I am not going to spend my votes at all. The little dots on the cards are indicating the number of votes that have been put in place, and that gives you a sense of the popularity of the topics. Let's give you 1 more minute to finish posting your topics and voting. Okay, probably could have. Alyssa, next time we do this, let's remind us to get a timer with music.
Sure.
Sorry about that, folks. It's the beginning of the new year, right? Our first Lean Coffee in 2021. So sometimes you got to work through the kinks. All right, I'm going to give everybody another 30 seconds to finish their votes on these topics. It looks like we're going to have some good conversation here today. All right, that looks like it is close enough. All right, that is definitely our time. So I'm going to start our conversation. You can see that in the to discuss column, we have our topics organized by popularity. Matt and I will trade off in terms of who will be the first speaker related to a topic area. And so, Matt, I will let you get started with the first topic. So I'm going to drag this, whoops, here into our first topic area. What do you do with assigned leaders who haven't had training and don't believe in SAFE yet, but have given the role of technical product manager? We're going to set 5 minutes on our clock, and you can see the timer right here. So Matt, take it away.
Okay, so the important thing here is to, one, understand, okay, they don't believe in SAFE, so are you implementing SAFE in your company? That's probably the big question. If you are, and the requirement is that you're working within an agile release train, you're going to have to help them understand some of the principles and values of SAFE itself for them to understand that. I mean, technical product manager becomes like okay, how does that role fit into SAFE, right? So you're going to have discussions of what it is they're trying to do and how that might fit in. If you just leave them alone, man, they could cause all kinds of issues and troubles for your train, for what's happening there. And so you have to spend some one-on-one time coaching them without training to find common ground, find what they believe they need to do, and help them understand how they can use their skills and what they can bring to the table into the SAFE environment. And then my next suggestion would be, once you do that, and once you help explain the values and principles and why the practices are in the place they're in, is get them into training as soon as possible after that, right? Because you want them to really be able to speak the language, understand what to do. If you don't, the problems you are going to have is they'll be taking away from what you're trying to do in your SAFE environment, but not on purpose, right? They're just trying to do their job and do it in a way they think they know how. And so it's not a thing to get upset or to say you're not agile or using words like that. It's very much to understand where they're coming from and help them make the bridge into a SAFE environment, and then get them training as soon as possible. Kathy?
Yes, thanks, Matt. And so when we have people that have been assigned to a role and they don't quite understand SAFE yet, or they have concerns or fears or aspects that they don't like about the framework, as Matt said, I like to start first from understanding, right? So what is their perspective on this new role? What do they think this new role is? How does this new role use the skills and knowledge and relationships that they already have in place? And like Matt, one-on-one conversations tend to work best in these situations. And I think as you talk with people who've been given a role, you need to be adaptable because maybe that person really does not belong in that role. Now, one other thing that I'd like to touch on related to this question is this idea of quote unquote technical product manager. I'm not entirely sure what that means. As you probably know, well, actually, I should say the audience for this session is kind of you're newer to SAFE, you're getting started. And so let's just do a level set. Within SAFE, we don't make a distinction between a business product manager and a technical product manager. In SAFE, it's simply the product manager role that is responsible for setting the vision and the roadmap and the priorities and so forth for the Agile release train, which is a team of Agile teams, typically 50 to 125 people. Those people are often business people, but that's not required, but they need to have that overall vision, understanding of the marketplace, and be able to guide this team of Agile teams.
Yeah, and a lot of times the role that might be some of the things that a technical product manager might do is covered by the system architect, which is another role on this in SAFE. The system architect is helping with the technical enablers that are needed on the train in order to facilitate adding new business features. There's our time.
Yes, excellent. There's our time. And so you guys can see in your lean coffee, you've got the opportunity to vote whether you want to continue on this topic, no preference, or you think we're finished talking about this topic. Just to get rid of my screen here, I'm going to vote no preference. You can see the vote totals as they're coming in. We'll give you guys another couple of seconds here to finish posting your votes. All right, looks like that's everybody who's going to vote. So no preference, ending topic. I think ending topic wins. Okay, so we'll finish that topic. Great, thank you guys very much. We will move on to our next topic here. And Matt, I'll start this one. So I'm working in my area to launch new art, but I'm facing middle management leadership pushback. Would like to hear some ideas on how to overcome. Great. So first of all, congratulations for launching a new art. That's always a big achievement. And then regarding middle management, I always like to start by understanding why they are pushing back. What's the nature of that resistance? Is it sometimes it's a lack of clarity. They don't really understand what's being done and why. They may not be clear about how they can continue to contribute. And so that sense of loss of control or expertise may cause them to provide inconsistent direction or request things that are at cross purposes with how we want to run our Agile release train. So my advice, start by asking them some questions. Why are you getting some pushback? What's the nature of that pushback? And then you can address those specific root causes. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, to follow along what Kathy said, understanding the root causes is really important. Often you will hear people call this group of managers the frozen middle. And it's often because they don't understand their role, even though that you might have brought them through leading SAFE, right? And leading SAFE, they hear a lot of kind of theoretical to them stuff about being a leader of developing people and, you know, these kind of things. But when it comes down to what do I do on a daily basis, they're not sure. What they're used to doing is helping to make sure the project gets done, right? And so that's what they're going to tend to want to keep doing. Let me help you help the project get done. And so it's really helping them understand that by helping to develop people, they're actually helping get the project done, so to speak. And again, that's helping define that with the leadership, the upper leadership who helped bring this in, and helping define their roles, I have found to be super useful. We redefined at a couple places I've been, we've actually redefined their HR roles to match, you know, supporting the lean agile principles, to developing people, all these things. And that really made a difference in how they acted and how they started to manage. So.
Yeah. And, you know, I run into this challenge in almost every single engagement. And I'll just share one technique that I've used over and over again that's been helpful. And that is to have these middle managers brainstorm, you know, in kind of a small group setting, have them brainstorm what are all of the tasks or the functions that they do on a day-to-day basis today, right? So they'll, you know, build a list, you know, like in Mural or Miro or whatever, because we're all remote now, but build a list. And then you, if you're an SPC or if you really understand SAFe, you can help them see where those responsibilities are redistributed in a safe environment. That will tend to give them an opportunity to talk through some of their fears and concerns. Well, my job isn't needed anymore, or the things that I like to do are really, you know, responsibilities of a system architect or of a product owner. And so then you can start those next level conversations about, well, maybe you can work yourself into one of these other roles within SAFe if you don't need to, you know, invest more of your time in being a people manager and a developer of people. So that's another technique that you can use there. Matt, any other techniques you want to share?
Yeah, like I said, if you go through and what I've done is said, hey, you know, I've done job descriptions for people who have transitioned to SAFe, and I show them all the work there is to do, and they're like, oh, okay, there is a ton of work to do still. And so helping them understand that, all of a sudden that helps them move forward. So that's what I would do. Don't ignore them, because they'll be your biggest impediment if you ignore them.
That's right. You have to help them and provide a psychologically safe environment for them to explore their fears and concerns.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So that's the timer for this topic. We'll give you guys the opportunity to vote whether to extend the topic. You've got no preference, or you want to end the topic. Great. Okay. Looks like we will end this topic. And as I said, we're kind of doing this as a modified lean coffee setup, where Matt and I are doing all of the responses here. So at the end of the session or during the session, feel free to provide feedback on whether you like this modified lean coffee format, or if you would like something a little bit different. Okay. Matt, are you ready to start?
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so what strategies do you use to sunset or uninstall the old ways of working when launching SAFe and team level agile methods? So one of the big things to do first is training is very important, because everyone has to see a path of how to move forward. Like, where are we going? And then once everyone has that vision and you set that vision as a lace, right, you're going to help set a vision of how do we make this transformation happen. Then you are going to have a very iterative way of rolling that out. And so having that understanding where you're going, having the parts that you need to actually go there, and then, putting them using Kanban and prioritizing those things, you can iteratively make those moves happen. So first thing, like the old ways of team level, program project manager status meetings, the first thing to do is, hey, let's educate those guys. And then, hey, okay, we're setting in place, we're going to start using SAFe. So how might we report differently than we have in the past? If we're using story points, if we're using principles where now we are saying that the best measurement of where we are is working software, how are we going to do that? How do we replace the things that were there? Once there's an understanding of there's a replacement and here's how we do it. Like, hey, we do this with a system demo. We do this with iteration reviews, right? That's how we show where we are in progress. And a status meeting no longer has relevance because that is the status, right? If we believe in those principles. And so as we're thinking through and incrementally making our transformation, we will also start to replace things and talk through what replaces that old thing. Like I said, now we have this instead of that. Now, instead of a post-mortem, we have retrospectives after every iteration. We have our inspect and adapt at the end of the PI. So those are just some ideas and ways of us replacing that. Now, some of the things that take longer will be like, hey, let's, OpEx, CapEx discussions, and, let's now budget for value streams instead of projects. Those things will take longer to replace, but you still want to have that vision and a pathway towards that vision. Kathy?
Yes, so Matt and Matt and I have worked together, so we use some of the same techniques, of course, but starting with that mapping, I think, is definitely the right way to go. Actually, this is one of the ways that sometimes we can get middle managers on board, right? So we start with, these are all of the techniques or meetings and reports and status reports that you do today. And guess what? These 3 are going to go away because they're going to be replaced by X and Y. And these other reports that you hate, your TPR, that's going to go away because now we're doing this instead. And so literally mapping things out, putting it in writing, creating the slides or the wiki comments or what have you, so that it's there, it's in writing, people can understand what is going away, maybe what it will be renamed, if that makes sense. But really helping people understand that. And then one of the other things that you want to do, because you want this new way of working to stick, make sure that you stress the benefits that will be gained by moving to this new way of working. And if you can, get a little testimonial from people, get quotes, record, the 1-minute videos where people say, I'm so glad I don't have to do the TPR report anymore. Now I just go to a daily stand-up, and that's great because I get a chance to socialize as well as tackle real work. So really look for opportunities to help sell the benefits.
Yeah, and if you do what Kathy said and kind of in common what I talked about, it alleviates the fear people have of, oh, this is the Wild West now that we're in SAFe, and there's no, structure to it. There's no reporting. There's no any of that. And as you can map that, it'll alleviate that fear.
Yes, and stress what's going away.
Yep.
Because sometimes people think that Agile is simply adding on top of what they do today. So you can see you've got the opportunity to vote, whether we continue this conversation or we end it. So I'll give you a second to give us your feedback. Okay, it looks like we will finish this topic. And we will move to this next one. So is there anything that can be done when leadership does not address system issues, such as managerial overreach and over-involvement? Yes. When you are starting to apply SAFE, there are often a lot of systemic problems or areas for making significant cultural change. And so let's talk about what some of the things that we can do are. First, we want to help leaders be aware that these issues exist. Remember, everybody's already doing their best. And so they think they're doing the right thing. Whether you are part of the LACE, the Lean Agile Center of Excellence, or a coach, you want leaders to understand that we're changing some of the rules of the game. Why are these rules and expectations and behaviors changing? Help them see how their current way of working is either aligned and either helping or not aligned and hindering this move to the new way of working. So increase awareness, increase understanding, and then work with the leaders to find a way that both parties, you as the coach and they as a leader, are comfortable getting nudges and reminders about where maybe they've slipped. So I'll just tell you a story here, and then I'll hand this over to Matt. So one of the organizations that I worked with, we played with them, or I played for the leaders a video called The Backwards Bicycle. And it shows a man named Dustin, how he's learning to ride this bicycle that operates, in a way that's opposite from what a normal bicycle operates. And that video provided us shorthand language. The CIO really appreciated this, and he called these moments his backward bicycle moments. So I'm falling off my backwards bicycle, or I'm just having a backward bicycle moment here. And those were his lapses to the old way of working. For example, where he would make a decision that somebody else should really be making because we've decentralized decision making. And so that phrase became our shorthand. I could say, hey, Mike, is this a backwards bicycle moment for you? And he would go, oh, yes, I didn't realize, but I'm overreaching here. I didn't realize that I took away somebody else's decision rights. So find a way to have that kind of open, honest communication with people. Matt?
That's awesome, Kathy. I use the same thing. I was just going, yes, Corey, the CIO, Corey, I use the exact same thing. And I'll also use the video about turning the ship around video. We'll
David
also
Marquez.
David Marquez video. And we'll use that same language from there of, okay, where are you here, right? And if you use things like that, it doesn't become personal, which is great. Like, hey, Corey, does it feel like you've fallen off the bike? And he's like, yes, I'll get back on. I know, right? And so, using things like that's really important. I think also expressing the problems that you might be having in a way where it's coming from the people who are feeling the problems of them overreaching or not addressing systemic issues will be really important. So those are things they should bring up in inspect and adapt. Those are things bring up in retrospective, things they should bring up as impediments. And then you will create this thing. And when they start seeing that that's a problem, okay, some of that is just transparency, and when they see it, they'll be like, okay, I am part of that problem. Not everyone. There are personalities where that will still be a difficult thing to do, but that I would really suggest that. And then one quick thing I'd suggest is a book called out of time.
Radical Candor.
Radical Candor, yes. Radical Candor. We incorporated that at one company. Everyone read it, and that became the new language. And so people were able to talk about those things openly. So I know our time's up. So go ahead and vote.
Yep. Go ahead and vote. And I'm glad you stuck that in, because that was going to be my transition back to you.
I'll put it in the chat for everyone.
That would be great, Matt. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So we will finish that topic as well. These systemic impediments are key. I'll just say one other thing as I move this over, and that is when you can, make sure that you continue to have visibility into some of these systemic impediments so that they don't fall by the wayside, and you can make sure that you are incrementally addressing those systemic problems or opportunities to change, as the case may be. Okay, Matt, I lost track, but I think this is you.
Yes, it is.
Go for it whenever you're ready.
So the question is, how do we engage all trained team members when we are remote? So a couple of things, and probably a couple of things to think through here. We have lots of online collaborative tools these days, Zoom being one of them, that we're on now. And so if you're trying to address a whole group at the same time, these tools are the important ways to do. If you're talking about individuals, you'll have to think through, how were you meeting with individuals before the pandemic, before we all went remote? And could you do the same thing? And going back to our principles, agile principles, face-to-face communication is really important. And so when I'm trying to talk to team members on Train Remotely, I will set up a Zoom meeting or some kind of interactive meeting with whatever tool I have. And we will, just like we are now, be on camera and be able to talk face-to-face. One of the things you could do, if you're the coach or someone who you want people to come to, another great practice I've seen is having open coaching hours where you're on a conference call like this and people can join and ask questions and you can respond, real time. So there are different techniques you can use. One of the things that's really important is to make sure you have a roster online, so you know who all the people are, you know who all the teams are, and so if you haven't reached out to one of them, you can keep track and then say, hey, you know what, I haven't talked to team so-and-so or the person on that team. I'm just going to go check in and see if they have any questions or anything to do. And then you might set up a quick Zoom link or a quick, WebEx, whatever the tool is, and have that one-on-one conversation with them. It is super important to do the Gemba, even though we're remote. And for those of you who don't know what Gemba means, it means going to the place where the work's happening. And so attend to scrums, have the conversations, look in the tools that you're using to really be a part of what's happening. It takes more effort probably than just getting out of your chair and walking over. And so, but having those tools and knowing all those things will help you navigate that and make sure that you're reaching everyone. Kathy?
Yeah, I think those are all excellent tips, Matt. Thanks. I really like the idea of having, again, if you are a coach or a middle manager, having your list essentially and kind of ticking off who you've been talking with recently. It's very important. Actually, I think, Matt, I think you and I did that when we worked together on an engagement a long time ago.
Yes, we did.
And that was in real life, just to help us remember who we've been talking with and maybe who needs a little extra attention. And then I'll share one other tip that a coach I worked with a few years ago. I was working in a company. We had people distributed all over the US and in Northern Ireland. And this coach set up what we called water cooler chats. And so every Monday morning, you could sign up to be randomly paired with somebody else for a 15-minute water cooler chat that we did over, over WebEx or Teams or Skype or whatever it was. And that gave us a chance to perhaps talk with somebody one-on-one for the first time, right? We might have been in a meeting with them, but it gave us one-on-one time. And we typically would spend a little of our water cooler chat time talking about personal topics, right? Getting to know each other as people, and then something else that was related to either work or something we were learning about, or a work-related book we were reading, or what have you, just to help build those relationships more broadly. And that's a technique that I really have appreciated and I've spread to other organizations over the years.
Thanks, Kathy. That's an awesome technique. I've seen it used as well. And it really helps for maybe before the pandemic, you had teams work together and the teams knew each other well. But if any of you are launching trains during this time frame and trying to get your idea of a team of teams, those are great to have that cross team on the train, kind of individuals getting to know each other. And then you'll start to feel more like a team of teams instead of just your team. Okay, so our time's up. Please click if you want to keep going or not, or no preference.
Yes, and I would say if you have some topics, or some suggestions to share, you've got two choices on how you can do that. You can add in topics for the card that's in the discussing column. You could put things into chat as well. Okay, and we're getting some no preferences here, giving people a chance to finish voting. All right, it looks like ending the topic is winning. Great, thanks everybody. Excellent. And so here is our next topic. And again, we are working in the order of votes, so from most popular to least. So this topic is, what are the characteristics of a good release train engineer? So I'm going to invite people. You can either click into this gray box to add a comment. You can put your ideas in chat. And that way we can get some perspectives from other people. As you guys are doing that, I will share a technique that I like to use, and then I'll share my opinion. So when we are getting started to form an agile release train, one of the little exercises that I like to do with people, either as part of leading a leading safe class or just in conversations in various workshops, is to get everybody who will interact with a potential RTE to brainstorm. What are the characteristics of a good RTE? What do you want from somebody who's responsible for leading 50 to 125 people in these agile teams of teams on a day-to-day basis? It's a very, very important role. And so some of the things that I like to see in a really good release train engineer is somebody who either already understands the lean and agile principles behind the scaled agile framework, or if they're new to those ideas, somebody who is willing to put in a little extra effort to learn and to exemplify those principles and the values associated with being a servant leader. So understanding and using the principles, being a servant leader, those are, and then I'll say also being an excellent communicator. Those I think are my top three. Matt, what about you?
So after your top three, a couple of other characteristics that I look for is they have to have a backbone. So they are going to go up against leaders way above their pay grade. And they have to be able to, like Kathy said, that's why it's not first, but if they understand the principles and values, they can explain to that leader based on principles and values why what they're doing is hurting the work or hurting what's going on, right? So they can have those conversations, but they need to be willing to have those conversations. What I've seen in RTEs that report into like someone in the train or a leader, and that leader's around, is they just do what that leader wants. And that's not what's best for the train or best for the company even. So for me, backbone, really important. Second one is gravitas. They need to be able to command a room. I know we're not in person now, and so they still need to be able to command a web version of what they're doing and be able to, get people to calm down when you're dealing with 200 people, be able to facilitate, a meeting with 200 people in it, even from a web perspective, right? And so if they don't have that gravitas, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to really lead important things like inspect and adapt, PI planning, those kind of large meetings and things like that. So those are things I look for on top of what Kathy said, because I've seen when those two things aren't there, how hard it is for things to get done. And then as a coach, I have to jump in, which that's not what we want to do. We don't want coaches to jump in. We want the RTE to be able to lead that train.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think probably one of the other characteristics that I'd like to see in a good release train engineer is being focused on building relationships and really being focused and invested in helping other people succeed and achieve their goals. I realize, some of that's part of servant leadership, but I just want to call it out because, again, it is so vital. As an RTE, you are invested in how people are collaborating together to achieve the targeted business outcomes. So you need to be ready to support that mode of working. All right, so that's time up. We'll give you guys a second to vote. Again, extend the topic and the topic no preference. Okay, it looks like we will end the topic here. Yeah, I could talk about RTEs forever. And thank you everybody who contributed their perspective on what makes a good RTE as well.
I'll just say this as we're transitioning, the RTE for me is the most important role on the train. And so having the right RTE makes a huge difference on your success.
Yes, I cannot underestimate how important an RTE is. Again, it really is the day-to-day leader for 50 to 150 people. It truly is a leadership position. I know some people see it as something less than that, but it really is a very significant leadership position. Okay, so we are ready to move into this next topic. What are some practical tips for conducting a value stream workshop? Excellent. And so it looks like I think I'm starting this one. Again, since some people on this call may be newer to SAFE, a value stream workshop helps you identify how does your organization make money. That's your operational value stream. So how do you make money or serve your customers? Then that enables you to find your development value stream, and finding that development value stream then helps you identify and design your agile release trains. And again, an agile release train is the team of agile teams that contain about 50 to 125 people total. With all of that said, I'll share some of my practical tips for conducting a value stream workshop. First and foremost, make sure you identify the right participants. You will need to communicate, whether it's in one-on-one discussions or email or what have you. Why are we doing this workshop? Why does that particular person need to participate? What knowledge and information do you want them to bring to the session so that they can effectively contribute? So the participants for the workshop typically are going to include people who go from the triggering event all the way through value delivery to your external customer. And so very often your initial participants are people who understand maybe the sales cycle or the browsing cycle, making an order or selling your product, configuring your product, servicing your product. The exact steps are dependent upon your company and the industry in which you operate, but you want that end-to-end view of people. So they need to understand the business and how the business operates. Then you need people who understand the applications or the solutions that support that operational value stream. You need data coming into your workshop. So do some research, do some analysis in advance so that you've got, some information about the applications. Know the number of people by geographic location and their primary skills. If you can get that data before you go into your value stream workshop, you will have some very useful concrete data to help you take the later steps in your value stream workshop, which are to identify your development value streams and then have discussions about structuring your agile release trains. So relationships, right people, data. Matt, what about from your perspective?
So I found it really helpful if the participants in the value stream workshop, like Kathy said, from tipping point through. So the first thing you would do is train them in leading safe. So I've had workshops where half the people were trained, half were not trained, and it led to much longer discussions than it would have had they all been trained. And so if you can train them all before you get into that workshop, that's ideal. As far as when you run the workshop, people are like, okay, I understand what a value stream is. I understand why we're doing this, right? It gives more of the why for them. The other thing is then emphasize the principle, again, going to the why of why we're doing this. Again, so when I start the workshop, I reiterate why we're doing this again, and to show them that we're just trying to, the idea is we want to do things that are going to help our operational value stream in the end. That's why we map out the operational value stream. I know we're trying to come up with what are the right arts underneath to help do that, but in the end, the whole purpose is for us to get value to our customers faster with great quality, right? Faster than we have in the past. And so another tip I would say is don't skip that operational value stream part, or don't like gloss over it and do something very high level and say, well, we're done, right? I've noticed a lot of systems are missed if you don't think through that operational value stream. So really, really spend the time on that part as much as you do on the rest. I know you're trying to get to what are agile release trains, but make sure that you spend the time. And if you've done what Kathy said, it will go a lot better because people are prepared, and we're having good discussions instead of trying to say, well, what's the next step for 20 minutes, right? So.
Yes, great. Okay, so here's your opportunity to vote on whether we continue or end this topic. If you'd like to vote. Okay, it looks like the votes have stopped coming in and we are finished. Great. Yeah, there's a lot to running a good value stream workshop. Okay, here comes your next topic, and this will be our last topic for today. Matt, if you want to start.
Yep. How do you address project-funded work, large initiatives fully funded without feedback loops as phase gates when initially launching SAFe? This is a great question. One of the things that I do, and it may not be, hey, we're implementing full lean portfolio management, right? We just need a way of seeing, hey, we've got all these things that we funded and maybe are in flight. How can we at least understand where they are, right? And so I will help set up a Kanban and put where these things are, just so we know about what we're doing there. And then what I'll work with is usually saying, do we know what the outcomes of these things are? Is everyone sure of the outcome? Go through that. If we're sure of the outcome, it's funded, and we know it needs to move forward, then we'll say, okay, how do we use this? How do we use what we have to break it down and make it into something that we can use at a train level, right? So one of the things, it depends where we are in that project. And then two, if we're trying to implement this, we start to embrace the SAFe things. And so we're going to take that fully funded project and then look at it. I like to look at it from the Epic point of view, and then have features that come out of that we can start to show progress throughout the thing. And so a couple of things to do is, again, let's understand all the work, because we're going to use someone's capacity to do this work, or we're going to decide to fund a brand new team or someone else to do the work. Second thing is, hey, let's look at it from a point of view as what do we expect the outcome of this thing to be? So we need expected outcomes. So I will use the Epic hypothesis statement in SAFe that helps us understand what it is we're trying to build. Even though we might have a project plan, we might have some of that information because we've done the work, the legwork for the project, that we can help populate that, but just making sure we all have an understanding of when something is done. That is one of the biggest problems I see with projects that have been this way, that people have done a lot of work, but they're not quite sure what done means, except when all these tasks are finished, right? And so what is the outcome we're trying to go for? Then help break that down into features that we can show progress throughout the way, and maybe even have value earlier than we would for this total project. Now, we may not, there may be considered a fixed scope already and a fixed date. And so what I try to work off of is, the next thing is to understand, what about the fixed date? Is there something that's really fixed there? If there is, let's work from that date, but say, okay, let's do the highest priority things that will give us the most bang for our buck first. So we prioritize that list of features and we work through them towards that date, right? So we're not saying we can fit all the scope within that date, but we're going to give you the highest priority things. and make sure that it's working along the way. People go for this because you've trained them and they understand the principles, and you start saying, this is how we apply the principles to this project that you want to get done, right? And so if the date is really that important and we can't move it, then okay, in Agile, we're okay with a fixed date. The thing we're not okay with is fixed scope. And so that's where we're going to work our way backwards with breaking down the scope, giving high-level estimates, and saying, hey, this is about what we can do by that time. And as we go, we're going to update where we can actually go and use real live information from working systems to help us inform what we can have by that date throughout the time frame. So any other tips, Kathy? Go ahead.
No, Matt, I think you touched on all the most important ones. So, take this body of work that's been funded and, is expected to be done, reimagine it as epics and features, start to apply SAFe, and just show people where these feedback loops fit in, and then help them understand that as they see working tested software, if they want to refine their vision or focus, that's okay. This is one of the benefits of working in an agile way. Okay, and so that, I think, is the end of our lean coffee for today. So please do us a favor, share feedback. So if you've got any type of feedback, things you like, things you wish we had done differently, in chat, and that way we can learn from this session. First time we're running it this way, and we really do appreciate your feedback. Alyssa, anything else?
Yes, I will be sending out a recording of this session about 24 hours from now. So look out for that in your inboxes. And if you can think of any questions or comments for afterwards, you can always email me at alyssa.hamilton@iconagility.com, and I'll put that in the chat so people can use that.
And Alyssa, do we want to remind them of the next one coming on January 28th?
Yep, sure. So that one is called How to Optimize Your Agile Release Train. It's a little more advanced than the session that we held today. You can register on our website through our calendar or on our webinars page. If you haven't joined or started following our LinkedIn page, you can do that, and I'll be posting about it, and I'll also be sending an email about it. So if you want to join our email list, you can do that on our website as well. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy and Matt, so much for hosting or doing a great session.
Great, you're welcome, and thanks everybody for participating and for sharing your feedback. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.